A video game where supervillains kill superheroes. Who thought that was a good idea? Man, I miss the days of fun video games like Captain America and the Avengers and Marvel superheroes. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. ISIS, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Rockstar Games is receiving major backlash for its Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League video game. Now, this Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League video game has alienated gamers and comic fans for its concept and its gameplay, and many gamers are extremely upset about the poor quality of play in Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. Now, many of those gamers are upset because the gameplay is of a far lower quality than previous Rockstar games, such as the Batman Arkham series, and with the gameplay and the graphics being of extremely poor quality, many gamers are so upset about this game that they're demanding refunds for this game that they say has extremely poor quality. Now, on the side of comic fans, many comic fans are upset regarding this game because this game basically goes out and disrespects the memory of the late Kevin Conroy, and this was supposedly one of Kevin Conroy's final performances, and it's in a game where Batman winds up getting murdered by Harley Quinn and the Suicide Squad. Now, that's where I start to have an issue with this whole Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League video game, because the entire premise is one that I believe is poorly written, and it's one that really goes out and makes DC Comics characters really look bad overall. Now, the premise of this game is that Brainiac has infected the Justice League with all of these nanites and have corrupted the Justice League, and have corrupted the Justice League to the point where Amanda Waller has to recruit a group of Suicide Squad members in order to take the lives of the Justice League to save the world. Now, that doesn't really make much logical sense for me as a writer, and it doesn't make much logical sense to me because if you kill the Justice League, then that basically opens up the world to invasion by Brainiac, and the Suicide Squad isn't powerful enough to take on Brainiac, so this story's whole premise is terrible from minute one. And it's really lazy writing as I see it, because this was the same premise of another superhero story from DC Comics, I believe back in the 2010s, where they had another game where Lex Luthor and the DC villains killed the Justice League, and this led to an invasion by Brainiac, and that story was done a bit better, but it went as a time travel story where they looked to make things right, but this story is just so lazily written that it basically copies that story, and as it copies that story, it takes elements from Injustice Gods Among Us, and all of these elements of storytelling really are a turnoff for a longtime comic fan and gamer like myself when I had a PlayStation 1. I mean, this game's whole premise is a turnoff to me because I don't really want to play a game where I'm seeing supervillains killing superheroes. That's not something that I find a reason to go out and buy this game. No, back when I used to buy superhero games like Sega Genesis's X-Men and Captain America and the Avengers when it was available on Genesis, those games really excited me because I got a chance to play my favorite superheroes like Iron Man and Captain America, the Vision and Hawkeye, and watch them take on the bad guys. And as I got my PS1, I got an opportunity to finally get Marvel Superheroes in 1997 from Capcom's port of that game, and it was really it was exciting for me to finally get to play all of my favorite Marvel superheroes and watch them take on Thanos as he had the Infinity Gems and be able to beat Thanos and as related to that entire game. that was the main motivation for me to go out here and buy these superhero video games, was seeing these superheroes go out and save the world. But things have gotten so twisted these days with companies like DC Comics that we no longer see superheroes as heroes, and we've gotten this whole campaign by companies like Rockstar to try to give us the idea that villains are people we're supposed to relate to and want to be like. And that's where I have another issue with Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, in that we have a video game designed to try to make the bad guys heroes and make us believe that playing as a bad guy is something that we want to do. And that's not something I believe anybody would want to do unless they were a sociopath or a psychopath, because those are the only kind of people who would want to play as a villain to participate in murdering a hero. That's not the kind of story I would want to sell to people, but Rockstar thought that this was a good idea, and now they're dealing with the blowback as related to the entire mess that this game is. And with this game being a complete disaster, it's actually going to be one of the bigger flops next to Marvel's Avengers game, which really didn't give us much avenging, and because they gave us knockoff versions of Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Black Widow, and the Hulk, and heavily pushed Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, a creatively totaled character, to the forefront, trying to make us like Kamala Khan, even though audiences had soured on that character as far back as 2015, with the all-new, all-different Marvel never getting any traction. But that's another video. With DC right here, they've basically shown that their characters can't be merchandised due to the incompetent licensing of Warner Brothers Discovery and the complete mismanagement of Rockstar Games, which is now run basically not by the original owners of Rockstar Games that gave us the Arkham series. No, what we're getting is a Rockstar Games that is run by a lot of these social justice activists, far left types, and I would believe Arkham certified individuals, because only an Arkham certified individual would want to take a subversive group like the Suicide Squad and put them in a game where they would go out and look to murder members of the Justice League, and believe that killing superheroes in a video game is a good idea, because killing characters that are considered icons and paragons of morality, that's not something that would basically appeal to all of those families out there as related to video games, and parents looking to buy video games for their kids, or even teenagers who like to buy video games. No, only a sociopath or a psychopath would want to play such a game, and that's where I see the optics for this game being really bad for Rockstar Games and doing damage to their brand. I mean, the whole concept of a Suicide Squad murdering the Justice League, again, a group of villains who have been recruited by Amanda Waller to go out and participate in covert missions, going to be in a whole game to murder icons like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in ignominious fashions. That's not really something I would find to be appealing as related to a purchase for a game. No, I would want to go out here and buy possibly a Justice League game like Justice League Heroes that came out many years ago, or a Justice League game. That's what I would believe would be something that would get people excited as related to video games and DC Comics. But sadly, we've got so many of these dysfunctional people, and I'm not just going to say these activists and social justice types who have no real life experience. We've got some really twisted types out there who really, I believe, need to be in some sort of mental health counseling, because if you think that making a game about villains murdering heroes is a good idea, that's a person I would really not want to be working for me. I mean, as running SJS Direct, if I had to deal with someone who came to me and said, hey, I want to do a game where you get to kill SJS Direct characters, that's the person I'm going to be firing immediately, and I'm going to be firing them immediately, because that's not what I want to promote my brand. No, I want to promote my brand by creating stories that elevate the heroes and the heroines of the SJS Direct brand, And I would think that if you run a company like Warner Bros. Discovery, you would want to yank the license of anyone who would create material that would make your heroes look bad. Unfortunately, David Zaslav doesn't really know doesn't really have a clue as related to his business, because he doesn't see how this basically is going to do damage to his overall brand. I mean, this game where you get to see Wonder Woman stab Superman with kryptonite, and get to see Wonder Woman die, and get to see the Flash get shot and Batman shot in the head on a bench. I mean, all of this stuff is completely out of character for these characters, and it's not something many fans want to see regarding heroes that they grew up with. It's not something I would want to see as related to these heroes that I grew up with and I bought lots of comics and merchandise for. I mean, as a guy who's been a fan of comics since he was 4 years old, this whole game made me sick to my stomach. And it made me sick to my stomach not only because the characters were being taken out of character, it was also the overall just sick premise of this whole game. And if this is where fandom is going, then I have no problem getting away from this fandom, because if this is the kind of game that defines DC as a brand, then I have no problem walking away from DC at this point, which I already have as related to collecting a lot of their merchandise after the New 52 came out in 2011. But at this point, if this is the direction they want to go in, then I have to say I'm glad that I stepped away from them, and I have no problem walking completely away from all of their merchandise at that point. And if you're going to be promoting antisocial values and antisocial messages in your material, it's just not something I see as the DC I grew up with, and I don't see it as the kind of DC that gets families and children excited about DC characters. And I'm not really, again, happy with the overall DC direction, which has become darker and more grittier. I mean, it's even darker than the 80s with the DC stuff these days at the comics, with the publishing, and with the merchandising. And with this type of game, it basically makes it where you feel like you get no hope, no sort of joy from looking at their material. I mean, I've looked at a lot of DC comics online, and I don't really see that hope or that joy or that optimism people had with DC in the 70s and the 80s. I mean, DC used to be a brand that would basically put a smile on your face, where you saw the good guys beat the bad guys. But over the last 20 years with Dan Didio, when he was in charge, he took us down this dark road with these dark heroes, this gore, this violence, and it's a complete turnoff to me, and it's been a turnoff for many DC Comics fans and comic fans in general, because people go to play video games and read comic books to escape, and instead of giving us escape, what we're getting is a world with no hope and no peace and no joy and no happiness. So people, as I see it, are getting turned off with DC. And when I look at Suicide Squad kills the Justice League, it just kills my interest in DC, but it takes us down a dark road as related to comics and superheroes, and this is the main reason why comics are having a hard time selling, and many people are just turned off by comics. They don't want to go and buy books or play video games where their favorite heroes are getting murdered. No, that's not something that I would believe would be appealing, and that's really been shown with the sales of modern comics, which are to the point where nobody's buying comics, nobody's really buying action figures, nobody's really buying merchandise like they did back in the early 2000s. No, what's happening now is that you have all these people trying to make all of this dark super edgelord material, and all it's doing is cutting people out of the hobbies that people used to love. And that's what the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League game does. It takes you out of the games you used to enjoy. It takes you out of the fun that you had, because people want to watch stories where the hero beats the bad guys, the heroes win the game. That's what people pay for video games. That's what I paid for when I got copies of Captain America and the Avengers and X-Men for my cousin back when he was young for a Christmas gift. And it was also the reason why I went out and bought Marvel Superheroes when I was working at the supermarket. I mean, I saved up and I looked forward to that game because Marvel Superheroes was so much fun. And I know that there are many people who love the Marvel vs. Capcom games. And I believe that there's no place for all of this darkness and grittiness and deconstruction. I mean, people just want to see good guys defeat the bad guys, fight for the right, and fight for what's good. I mean, that's what we want as related to video games and comic books, and sadly, people who are running these companies don't really seem to understand that the ultimate goal of these games is supposed to be people seeing hope and fun and optimism. I mean, that's what superheroes represent, but what we get from these companies is a lot of social justice, identity politics, and just misery and pain. And life is too short to be miserable, and that's why these companies are losing money, because if you bring misery to people, what they do is not want to do business with your company or be in your company. And I wouldn't want to be in the company of anybody who enjoyed playing a video game where they get to murder superheroes, because if you can murder the people who represent the very best, then you're promoting the worst about society. And I don't really want to be out here looking at a game that presents me with the worst of society when I grew up in the South Bronx with drug dealers, gang members, and assorted thugs making life miserable. I mean, as somebody who grew up with poverty and pain and all that stuff, I don't want to go out here and play a game and spend money to play a game with misery. No, I want to give people the kind of stories that are fun and hopeful and optimistic and give people a positive picture of life. That's what I want to give people when I create content, and it's sad that the people running Rockstar don't have my mindset, and it's sad that Rockstar thought that this was a good idea for a game. And if you think killing superheroes is a good idea for a game, then I definitely believe you need to get your head examined. Now, if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, or my black vampire novel, Eternal Night, or my black sorority novel, The Thetas, or my black business novel, A Recipe for Success, then you can find all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you want to check out my first full John Haynes comic, you can find that comic on Lulu.com right now by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to support the channel and help me to be able to make more videos about comics, video games, science fiction, and fantasy, or be able to continue to have money to continue putting in pledges on great independent comic Kickstarters and Indiegogos, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.